Hey guys, today we're going to talk about the Thorfire C8S. The C8 models of flashlights are actually produced by several different manufacturers. What a C8 flashlight is essentially an 18650 battery with a larger head. So most flashlights kind of come and are just like a tube. This one has the larger head. Larger head gives you the deeper and wider reflector, which gives you more throw. Now the C8 is a very popular style of flashlight because not only does it give you a very tight, nice, narrow beam that shoots out at a really good distance, but it also has a really good amount of spill that'll go down, which is a kind of an outer ring of light that will light up the area in front of you. So it's kind of the best of both worlds. It shoots a really far beam, but also lights up the area immediately around you. And the balance between the two of them is really, really good, which is why these are so popular and why so many people make the C8. So Thorfire makes a version here. I want to talk about it, the differences between that and its competitors, and why this is a good choice for a lot of people. Now, everybody's flashlight needs are very different. So what may be important to you may not be so important to the next guy. So I'm going to try and kind of introduce this objectively. So we're going to start right off at price. Your Thorfire C8S, depending on how much you get it for, you're talking 20, 25 bucks on Amazon. This is the XINTD C8, which is available from a store called International Outdoors, based out of China. This light will cost you 29 American dollars, and you're going to have to get it shipped. So you're not going to see it for 10, 15, 20, 30 days, who knows. If I didn't mention the Thorfire, you can get through Amazon right here in the States. Order it with Prime, it'll be at your door in like 2 days. The Convoy C8, available at many different stores, places like Banggood, GearBest, Fast Tech, and there's a place here in the state called the Mountain Electronics, which I'll put a link to. Is a really good place to buy it. Price-wise, you're talking anywhere from like 10 bucks to 25 bucks, depending on where you buy it. So if you buy it locally from Mountain Electronics, you're talking 14, 15 bucks, and you'll have it in about a week. All right, so these all have different mode spacings, different brightness, and so we're not going to go over the nitty-gritty details of it all because, to be honest, your mileage is going to vary depending on, number one, what batteries you use and all that. So for me to tell you you're going to get this out of the light and that out of the light and why this one's better and that one's better, it's not really going to matter because really 99% of the performance and how this is going to do is based on the batteries you buy. So that's an important factor. And plus I've also modified pretty much all three of these, so there's some stuff to take into account there. Now I did do an absolutely tremendous amount of testing, which I'll show you here. We actually tested this guy, compared it to a whole bunch of different other flashlights, measured run times and brightness, like over an interval a couple minutes. I did readings of tail cap currents. I did a ceiling bounce test, which is a rudimentary way to measure brightness. I did some more after I did some modifications, just to see how it affected the light. So let's talk about modes. Your Thorfire has 4 just flat modes. It's got a Moonlight mode, low, medium, high. Very simple. We'll actually show you real quick since we've got an actual battery in this one. Goes right onto your high. Next is your Moonlight. Next, bam, black to high. Black to high, back to high. You see the Moonlight is very low. I really love this Moonlight. It's just a very simple, very low beam. Very, very handy. So I think the mode spacing is just excellent on this guy. I don't have batteries in the other two, so we aren't going to get to see that. But your Convoy has 2 sets of modes. One is just a low, medium, high. The other is a low, medium, high strobe and disco rave. So you can select between the two. Pretty easy, pretty simple. But the modes are low, medium, high. There's no moonlight. That's one of people's big complaint about the Convoy is no moonlight. XINTD, similar to the Thorfire, 4 even modes. Moonlight, low, medium, high. So very, very similar there. So modes, pretty close. The only one that kind of loses out is that Convoy because it doesn't have the moonlight. Alright, so we talked about that. Of course they use where did I get 18650 batteries. rechargeable lithium-ion 18650 batteries. There's some slight differences between them. Of course, the XINTD is a little more, different anodizing, glow-in-the-dark tail cap, some different stuff. It's got an anti-reflective glass lens, a few little upgrades in that you don't get with the other two. But these are still, nonetheless, very good. A tail stand, which is awesome. Little crenulated bezel, so if you put it down, you can actually see the light. Decent glass on it, nice, clean, smooth reflector on that bad boy. And build quality, really nice. So let's talk about the old Thorfire versus the new Thorfire. So originally what these Thorfires had was called a removable pill, which is a threaded piece of, I believe it was aluminum in them, that goes into the head of the flashlight. It holds the LED and the electronic driver for them. And this is kind of a preferred construction technique for a lot of the flashlight dorks out there, because they like to be able to take them out, modify them, and it makes it very easy. However, heat transfer is not the best for that. So Thorfire's coming up with a new version with an integrated shelf into the head. On one side of the shelf you put the driver and it screws in with a retaining ring. On the other side the LED goes in. What does that do? Basically now you're using the entire flashlight as a heat sink instead of just that little tiny screw-in aluminum pill. So it does help with thermal management, especially if you're going to hot rod these things and modify them. It is pretty important. Now some people do prefer the pills. If you're going to be modifying, it makes it a lot easier. Trying to get in there to solder is can be very, very difficult. But like I said, guys, these things are very good build quality for the price. You've got really good anodizing. Got those nice little heat fins on there. Let's see if we can get this guy to focus. Good knurling on it. The tail switches, you can just hear that. It's really good quality. Like I said, you have a really nice smooth reflector on that. This is going to come with an XM-L2 LED, which is pretty much like the brightest you can get on the market right now. The Convoy also comes with an XM-L2, and the XINTD you can either get with an XM-L2 or the XPG, which is really good for throw. This will make a really nice narrow beam out of that. So, I also did, and you have to see my video on it if you're interested. I did tail spring bypasses on these two flashlights. So basically now they have a little wire in the tail cap and the end of the driver, so that the springs, which have a higher resistance, don't have a direct path using a copper braid. Alright, so let's talk performance. Now, in my first test, what I actually found was that 3 of these flashlights actually had very similar brightness. Now, what I did was just measure this with a lux meter every 10 minutes throughout the course. So, initially they had very good brightness. 30 minutes, you can see the Thorfire and the Convoy sagged down, but the XINTD stayed strong. After 60 minutes, the XINTD was still doing great. Thorfire and the Convoy were still going down. And you can see the Convoy died out at 90 minutes. I'm sorry, the Thorfire died out at 90 minutes, the Convoy 106, and that big bad XINTD went for 115 minutes. But then I got all like, uh-oh, I screwed up. This wasn't very scientific because I only had a bypass in the Convoy at that point. So I did a spring bypass on the Thorfire, retested, and basically what I found was the now the Thorfire was a hair brighter than the Convoy, and I closed a little bit of the gap on the run times. But you also notice too that the low voltage kicks in at 3.09 with the Thorfire and 2.89 with the Convoy. So their run times are probably pretty close if that weren't factored in. So with the spring bypass, the 2 of these perform very, very closely. So what do you expect? I mean, they're pretty much the same shell, just different electronics. Now I also did a ceiling bounce test, which basically is a way to measure the light bouncing off a white wall or a white ceiling. That way, if you're measuring the light with a lux meter, you're not just getting the bright hot spot or whatever. You can actually measure the total amount of light coming in. So what I did, set it up in front of a white wall, measured it, and what I actually found was that the Thorfire had the most brightness of all of them, 1260 versus 941 for the XINTD, and 1160 for the Convoy. But you can see they had the middle modes are pretty much identical, their low modes are pretty much identical, but Thorfire did have that little Moonlight mode, and you can see the XINTD has a little different mode spacing there. So did want to point that out. The last thing I did, of course, was I did put an XPL high in this Thorfire. I changed out the LED, and after doing that, this flashlight pretty much became the brightest thing I have. Easily almost doubling the brightness of the Convoy and the XINTD, and it brought that runtime a little closer as well to the rest of them. But once again, it cuts out at 3.1 versus the Convoy 2.9. So there's a difference in the low voltage protection. And that's another thing to mention. It does have low voltage protection, so you will not over discharge unprotected batteries. So you can use nice high drain unprotected batteries in this thing, and you will be completely fine. So overall, guys, this is a fantastic little flashlight. If you're into modding, you're just starting out, you want to mess around with these things, they're really good. You can get one at your door in like 3 days. And I really like, I like all flashlights, guys, let's be honest. But I really like the mode spacing on this. I was going to replace out the electronic driver as well, but I decided not to. I like that it's got the Moonlight and then the 3 modes. Very happy with it. Everything's, good quality, and it's what you come to expect. The C8 is a very mass-produced style of flashlight. They've worked out all the bugs. It's a really good investment. It's small, it's pocketable, it's super bright. I mean, these things, if I had to guesstimate, the XINTD is probably 700-800 lumens, and the 2 Convoys are probably around 900. Now, how I'm guesstimating that is by taking the tail cap readings. What I did, which we'll pull back out the little notebook, and whoops. So what I did was I actually took a multimeter and measured the amount of amps they were drawing through their tail caps. Take that and you compare it to the lumens that the LEDs output, and you can get a rough idea of how many lumens these things are putting out, which is kind of cool. And that verifies also, and I can correlate that with my ceiling bounce test, and I can actually get a fairly good and fairly accurate idea of how bright these things are. So pretty much, guys, after a little bit of modding, this is pretty much my brightest flashlight now, except for the couple of pocket rockets that I built. Run times aren't the best, but I might be able to fiddle with that and take some of the resistance out by replacing some wires or something like that, and actually increase that, so I wouldn't consider it too horrible a big deal. After all, I like the challenge. But overall, guys, great investment for the money. And even if you want to go for an XINTD or a Convoy, you know what, you're going to get hooked on the flat platform, and you're going to end up buying them all anyway. But a good place, I think, to start is actually the Thorfire, because you can get it quickly through Amazon. You have that protection from Amazon, so if there is a problem, you can return it easily. You don't have to pay 20 bucks to ship it back to China or have any problems like that. I think it's a really cool addition. And plus, guys, there's so much you can do with these, from the magnetic tail rings to glow-in-the-dark switches, glow-in-the-dark O-rings, just all kinds of fun you can have with these things at a pretty cheap, and plus they're just one of the most versatile designs, and there's so much you can do with these. They're good in your car, they're good in a bug out bag, you can stick them in your coat pocket. There's just so much you can do with this thing, and for the price, you're not going to get much better or much brighter of a light without it being a hot rod. It's going to have to be 3, 4, 5 amps, and with that kind of you're going to be generating some serious heat. So we'll just leave that at that, and I hope you guys